Hello, everyone. I can't tell you how great it is for me to be here and moderate this special 2024 edition of the David N. Redden Conversations, brought to you by the American Trust for the British Library. I'm Jesse J. Holland, a journalist, author, and now I am the Associate Director of the School of Media and Public Affairs at George Washington University, where I get to shape the young minds of our future journalists of tomorrow. Folks, we have quite a treat for you here today. Joining me are two absolute powerhouses in the world of libraries. Sir Roly Keating, who heads up the British Library, and the incredible Dr. Carla Hayden, who's making history as our 14th Librarian of Congress. You know, these Redden Conversations are like the Super Bowl of bibliographic discussions. And with these two brilliant minds here, we're in for something special. We're talking to the leaders of two of the world's most impressive libraries. So trust me, you'll want to stay tuned for this conversation. Before I dive in, I want to give a quick shout out to the Library of Congress and the British Library for making this conversation happen and letting us record it for posterity. So, Sir Roly, Dr. Hayden, let's jump right in. So, as Sir Roly ends his tenure at the British Library, I'd like to know how you first met and what your impressions were of each other and of each other's institutions.
Well, I'm going to start because when I started my tenure as Librarian of Congress, I knew there was one institution that I had to visit right away, and that's the British Library, because it is almost a friendly partner and competitor, but really an institution that was doing so much, and I'd heard about the fact that they had this wonderful new director, Mr. Keating. And I said, well, I have to see what's going on. And I went to visit, and I had an immediate case of jealousy, because the British Library, when I walked just in the plaza, there were all kinds of community groups that were doing different things, and they had a cafe and a shop that was wonderful, and then the George III Library that was just visible in this tower, and the researchers and the general public were mingling, and it was just so inspiring.
A little bit of library envy there.
Oh,
huh?
there was a lot of library envy. And they had something that the Library of Congress now has, a series. I'm a mystery fan. And so I go to my local bookshop in Baltimore, Maryland, and I see a section of the British Library crime classics. And I said, oh my gosh, not only do they're invading my home territory, the British Library is right here, but it was a great thing. And now the Library of Congress has a crime classics of works that are not in copyright, but that are classic mystery novels, and we got it from the British Library. So I just spent my first meeting with Roly, though, realizing that he had come from a different type of institution into a library setting, and I had just had the same thing, the same experience.
Really interesting.
So same question for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's really interesting, Carla, to hear you talk about that. I mean, first of all, there is something, I think, about both of us stepping into these great national research library institutions, but from slightly different backgrounds. Carla, you huge library career, but in the public library sector. Chiefly, I came into the British Library from a completely different world, Jesse, more like your world, from the BBC, from broadcasting, many, many years there. I guess also with a public institution wanting to tell stories and reach people, but in a slightly different milieu. So I think my first encounter, therefore, with Carla was that visit at the British Library, probably 7, 8 years ago now. And I had been to this amazing institution before. And I mean, if you run the British Library, there's probably like only one library you're in awe of, and it's this one. And it remains spectacular in its scale, and we are deeply linked. We learn from each other all the time. And so I had that vision of the Library of Congress in my mind when Carla came to visit. And I think in terms of first impression, what struck me then, though, was the fact that suddenly you and I were able to talk in a very natural, human way just about people and outreach and communities and stories and all the things that feel natural in a way, but maybe aren't always associated with national libraries. And so I think maybe you were listening and learning, and that's great to hear, but it was happening the other way too, not least because it was empowering and validating to hear how you could really go on this journey with these great libraries without changing any of the fundamentals about the purpose, creating the facility for anyone, and in your case, of course, members of Congress, for us, any researchers, academics, needing the most serious scholarly approach to these extraordinary collections, but also while reaching out to new communities, new audiences, new ways of telling stories. And really, it's been back and forth like that since. And in those years when I've come back to visit here, it's just been a joy to see this institution really living in so many more ways even than it was before.
Now, I will say that I'm a library fan. My mother is a retired high school librarian. And so librarians around the world have been graced with these conversations between you two in public for years. So in that light, how has your ongoing public dialogue shaped your understanding of what a national library can be in the 21st century and the future? What are you seeing? What are you learning from each other that is going to shape the future of libraries?
I think Roly really hit on it, the balance that we can strike as we reach out to the general public, people who might not be writing a dissertation or a thesis or a book, how we can make sure that we are not, there's a fear sometimes, a cultural fear among staff, and we both encountered that by doing one thing, reaching out, opening up things, that you're taking away from the concentration on that type of serious research and what is research. But we also are looking at how can we inspire people to be researchers. What about the young ones? And so one of the things we did, and I saw one of the classes at the British Library, and this gentleman had teenagers, not an easy group to get, from all parts of England. And he was an expert in linguistics and accents, and he got them so engaged with, how do you know you're from this part or this part, and what do you say, and where are the words, and it was just really wonderful. And I could see that some of the young people were thinking, oh, that's kind of cool. What is that? What's the title of this doctor so-and-so? And that way that we could reach out, help the research community, and also grow researchers.
So interesting to hear that. I mean,
You know who that was.
I do know who that was, and he is brilliant. But I mean, but he's one of many here and there in both institutions, and I think you've hit on one important fact, which is that sometimes, or quite frequently, it's those experts in these organizations who are global scholars, world-renowned, but actually they are driven by an endless passion for what they do, which communicates itself instantly to anybody. It's a human thing. People can just see the love of subject and the sheer irrepressible interest bursting out of this apparently scholarly, grand, professorial curator. And I guess maybe as a broadcaster, I knew straight away, that's when I first came to the library. That's so precious, but sometimes the institutional walls can bottle that in a little bit. But I think you talk about maybe the internal culture needing to go on a journey. I'm sure that's true, but maybe it was for me feeling really trepidatious 12 years ago when I took on this job, because I was coming in from broadcasting, not even from a library space, and fearing that actually the community, the professional community, might be a little unwelcoming to my arrival. But actually, day one, the opposite was true. I could tell fundamentally these were people wanting to share what they have, and in a way, that sense of welcome is something that I've been working with and encouraging them to welcome everyone else in. There is no limit to the welcome. In fact, we did a campaign listing all the different kinds of people who should feel welcome at the National Library. And it was, I think you've hinted at this, addressing that national concept head on, because national can mean forbidding and grand and great classical pillars, and we're surrounded by them here. But it also means a true nation, a community or nation, seen internationally, and being for everyone. And I suppose perhaps the breakthrough for us was a moment with our board, about 2015 time. It was around the time we were just getting together, where we were rewriting the language of our mission, sticking with our Act of Parliament, but writing that language. And we put the word everyone into the mission statement for the first time. We make our intellectual heritage accessible to everyone for research, inspiration, and enjoyment. And all credit to our board, who didn't blink. But that little word has changed a lot since. And of course, you can't literally reach everyone.
Right.
But whenever you encounter an individual or a community who feels excluded from this collection, which is really their birthright, it's a little challenge to think, how can we help them in or remove a barrier?
And the Library of Congress really followed on that and put in about this is a library for all.
That's right.
And so that concept that there is a place for you, or there's something in the collections that you could relate to, or you could aspire to, or you could just enjoy. And it's just that feeling of opening up and getting that enthusiasm from the curators and the librarians, because they are just, I know you've had this experience, you learn so much from them.
Of course.
Every day.
Every day. And an enjoyment, that was also, we put that in our mission statement, and that actually came from one of my board members. We nearly got there. And he said, yes, but where's the fun? And so we added, so now research, inspiration, and enjoyment, and that's become a bit of a mantra for us. So I think that's definitely been a dialogue theme.
And that it's okay to have fun.
Right.
Yeah.
It's okay.
That's right.
Instead of worrying about somebody going, shh,
Right.
you can have
Well,
quiet
there's
fun, right?
There's that stereotype.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we have quiet spaces in
Right.
the library, and I mean, I think it must be the same here. It's both and, not either or.
Right.
In other words, we would not be serving everyone if we spoilt that core, precious silence or near silence you get when people at the heart of a reading room are really studying.
Right.
But we have other spaces, and gradually there's a continuum of these spaces, and some might have quite a broad hum and noise and chatter of activity, and some of the younger users we have with their laptops, they want to concentrate, but they don't necessarily want absolute silence.
Right.
And then every now and then, and I know you do it here, you might feel compelled to put on a concert or a
Oh,
gig
that's
or
right.
something.
Concert or two.
Or live at the library on
Right.
Thursday
Yeah.
nights, where you have libations and
Right. Very good.
you have collection related activities, and so you really bring in a different crowd, and it's a fun way, having fun in this beautiful space.
Yes.
And a sense of ownership too that people get.
I think that, yes, an ownership is real. We often say we don't own these collections, we're custodians
Caretakers.
of them. They're everyone's collections. And events like the ones you've just described can actually just get people through the door. And maybe, 9 out of 10, 99 out of 10, 100 may not come back and study, but someone will. Someone will see something or hear something or feel validated or feel welcome, and that will lead to something very special. And if it doesn't, they will still have had fun for an evening in a way.
And they'll tell someone.
Yeah, that's the hope.
Speaking of accessibility, I know you librarians get this question all the time, but I just want to get your personal thoughts on it. What do you see as the fundamental purpose of national libraries in an increasingly digital world? And how are your institutions navigating the integration of emerging technology? And what challenges and opportunities are you seeing there?
You mentioned the word integration, because one of the things with national libraries is you're collecting in a way that is sometimes different from a local public library or even a college or university library that has specific things. You are really having a national view and a global view in terms of being this repository. So integrating the different aspects that are coming in digitally, more digital materials, but you're still going to have manuscripts, you're still going to have illuminated manuscripts, you're still going to have archives that are coming to you. So the challenge is making sure that you have the resources to integrate the different formats, care for the formats, have staff members that can work on those types of things as well. And so that's something that we're grappling with right now.
Oh, we grapple with it all the time, and I think it's the perennial question. And Jesse, we could talk a dozen different topics unpacking out of just that one question. I think, first of all, when I first took over this role, a lot of really smart people I know said, "Oh, why do you even need libraries now? Because we've got mobile phones, we've got these search engines. Really? Do you need that?" And I can only say that with every successive year in which we digitized our collections, or indeed started collecting under what we call legal deposit, the UK web or whatever, all I can say is that the queue to get in the building got longer every day, including young people wanting to come in. And of course they were using technology, they were using their laptops, but actually there was something in this very digital and media saturated age of information discovery, which of course is wonderful and is empowering. But it's also, I think, really increased the need and desire for people to come also into special spaces that are real spaces with other visible human beings who are also there trying to access knowledge in a concentrated, maybe not just a superficial way. And I can see that hybrid world where even the possibility of physical access to the collection draws people in. And of course, in the case of national libraries, however much we did with collections of these scales, and yours is a little bigger than ours, let's get that out of the way, but nonetheless,
we'll talk about that.
Get that out of the way.
We'll talk about
with these collections of these scale, honestly, in our lifetimes, in several lifetimes, we will not digitize all of this. So whatever the tendrils of the tech giants and so on, there is an awful lot of content in these vaults which can only in the end be accessed by coming in. And that has a kind of mystique about it in itself. So I think it's been an extraordinary affordance, digital. It has increased our reach. It's meant that we've been able to share, particularly international content, very, very widely. Both institutions hold content in multiple languages of the world, and that's been right. But of course, it carries endless expenses and risks as well. We had a cyber attack last year that interrupted a lot of our digital activities. The question of preservation, security, and the constant need to re-digitize and upgrade just becomes part of the life of these institutions, and it's hard work and it's hard effort. And of course, it doesn't displace the physical. It goes hand in hand with it.
Right. Speaking of that mystique of your collections, one of the things I want both of you to answer is, what unexpected discovery have you seen in your collections that have provided the most illuminating insight into your nation's cultural heritage?
I'd have to say something that's in our new permanent treasures gallery, which we also modeled on the British Library with the treasures, our first permanent treasures gallery, is the contents of Abraham Lincoln's pockets. Our president the night he was assassinated. And it really, I've seen people stand in front of the display case and marvel at just the humanness that it gives of this icon in our history. But you see his spectacles, you see something that came off of his jacket, and you think, what would you do if something came off of your jacket, a button, you put it in your pocket.
You put it in your pocket.
And the handkerchief that he had. All of this, it really just strikes people that he was real.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's so powerful when they see that. And they just say, why did he have two pairs of glasses? But it lends just itself to just thinking about him as a person.
Wow. Gosh, that's such a tough question, Jesse. I mean, if it's truly, I suppose, a national heritage, I'm going to go for an obvious one, but it's a powerful one, which is that every day you can come into our Treasures Gallery and see one of only 4 surviving 15 copies of Magna Carta. Mm-hmm. Just
right.
There for free, 7 days a week, walking off out of the tube station, and there is Magna Carta, still legible, still intact. And it's a thing of wonder in itself, and I always, even thinking about, I don't know, whenever the upcoming anniversary of the revolution here, and people still cite that document, and that sense of an artifact from an age and culture very, very distant and yet still weirdly connected to us gives me a little bit of a chill every time I see it. And then I reflect the story which we think is true, or more or less true, that that copy of Magna Carta only survived by the barest accident. It was discovered in a tailor's shop, and it was a part of a pile of old paper documents ready to be cut up to cut shirt patterns, and somebody thankfully turned it over and noticed it had quite an important text on the other side, and so it now becomes part of national heritage. So sometimes the treasures we hold are fragile. They're things that only have survived by the skin of their teeth, but they're all the more powerful for that.
Both of you have talked about how you're trying to get the public into the national libraries and bring it into the public discussion. Out of the public initiatives that you've launched during your terms, which ones have most deeply resonated with you and your communities? And are there any aspirations yet to be fulfilled in getting the public into these national libraries?
The programming that can take place, from concerts to that live at the library where you see people enjoying themselves, and family days on Saturdays when you have groups coming in, and now with the Treasures Gallery to see a family reunite and meet each other in front of something that's on display, a family tree that had been rolled up for decades. And so those types of things, when you have exhibits and programming, is what you really get the sense of the public appreciating and seeing something that relates to them.
Yes, and that's something where I think actually you set the pace, and we've finally got our family program properly underway, and it's really lovely to see it happen. But I think there's another bit of, Carla, your background, which we've now begun to take more seriously during this past 10 years, which is our connection to the public library network in the UK, because we're a national library, we're not responsible for public libraries. They're local government, local authority. There's no particular statutory role that we have, but it just somehow felt right to start having a little bit more connection and dialogue. And we've set up some different kinds of networks with some of the most dynamic and a growing number of the public libraries around the UK. And one of them is called the Living Knowledge Network, where really Living Knowledge was the name of our old strategy. We just reached out to public librarians who liked the sound of it. Do you want to come with us on an adventure? We don't quite know where it goes, but let's share, let's collaborate. And because maybe we could help each other. And lots of things have come out of that, including live streaming of events back and forth into public libraries, which is very special. You get live audiences assembling in a public library to hear something at the British Library, or sometimes the other way around. But actually, exhibitions, which are a big part of what we do. But historically, they'd been pretty much London-only things. So you put on an exhibition in London. But through that network, we discovered a few years ago, I think with the Harry Potter exhibition we did originally, which was popular in itself and a wonderful thing to be able to do, that actually we could use the curatorship and the storytelling that we created for that show and offer a version of it, doing a kind of structure, panels and displays for as many public libraries as might be interested. And then they could curate and sometimes their own version of it, inspired by the themes, in that case of magic. And so we've now done that again and again, and we just did it for a big exhibition on fantasy literature this time last year, which was hugely popular. And then this summer we did an exhibition called Beyond the Baseline, 500 Years of Black British Music, back to Henry VIII's trumpeter.
Wow.
But
See,
of
why
course,
we're jealous.
But Black British music is something which is about way more than just the big cities. There are stories of that. And so we did, again, panel versions of that. Or we didn't, the public libraries did versions of it. And that really does seem to have taken root. And I think the figures are just in that nearly 800,000 people stepped into what either our exhibition or, more to the point, one of these public library versions of it. And that's lovely because that's almost like a digital figure, except it's actually real people stepping in to see a show. So, and that's something which I think maybe a museum can't do in quite the same way. But there's something about libraries and the ability of the best public librarians to often improvise with very limited resources, but deep, deep knowledge of their communities. And we've learned so much from that. So I think for us, in answer to your question, it's probably that axis around taking a risk and opening up the National Library to the public ones.
And that's because of my background. The Library of Congress has been putting more of an emphasis, and we've been doing the live streaming and actually connecting with them. And you're right, they're so appreciative, and it helps so much because this is like bringing something very special to their communities and connecting that people in the local communities know this is their national library that's connecting with them.
Yeah. And I mean, let's be honest, it's great for us as well because it means that these institutions that can feel like distant fortresses just for a moment are touching people's lives out there in the communities.
Like you, Roly, I come from a journalism background. And one of the things that journalism is struggling with right now is misinformation. In an era of widespread misinformation, how do you see national libraries evolving as the guardians of authoritative knowledge, especially about their specific countries?
Well, we've always been. Libraries in general, public libraries, that's one of our strongest, I think, values and really a strong perception from the public that we're trusted sources. And so they know that librarians, and that's where our stereotype helps us, that we're not in it for the money, we're not in it, but we're, when we used to say, let the books battle it out on the shelves, we get different points of view. Right. And you are trying to present information that people can trust. And so we do have that legacy. In national libraries even more because we are custodians of materials and information too.
Definitely, and I mean, it's been, but I mean, you're right, it's a timely question now. I remember we had these debates, I mean, again, not long after you took over, that's when I think the fear of disinformation through all sorts of sources was really beginning to take root, and it's not gone away, but it's been striking, I think. I don't have the statistics to hand, but I'm pretty sure that trust in librarians as a profession has remained extremely high. And I think it's two kinds of trust. I think it's that such is the discipline of librarianship that actually people know that they're going to be helped, whatever they ask. It's not that they're not going to be judged. They can come in with any opinion, any perspective, and what a good librarian will do is point them just towards this book or that source, or maybe help them to think through what the nature of that particular document is, but always to allow them to learn and them to make up their own minds. And I think that I think is common to the smallest public or community library
Anywhere.
through to a national library. And then for national libraries in particular, to your point about the books battling it out, it's just all here. and if you're looking for truth, the truth is like the totality of that. And it's not easy, and there will be books that contradict each other. There are books that vehemently support one opinion or vehemently support another. But the trust that we can offer is that we will make those available to you and create the conditions for anyone to come into that very protected environment of the library, where the person next to you might have a really different way of looking at the world. But for just that moment, you are both just using this collection to try and get to your version of the truth. And those spaces, they're not totally easy to find in the culture at the moment. And libraries, thank goodness, are one of those very, very special corners.
And they protect your privacy. And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that we're not telling people, oh, look at what they're looking at or something.
That's right. That's right.
What do you perceive as the greatest challenges affecting national libraries, and how do we address that going into the future?
Well, the formats too. And
Yeah, do you
we're
wanna have a
still,
go? Yes.
Well, we're still collecting and making accessible 12th century illuminated manuscripts. And we're getting in things that are more digital, and we're getting a collection, another jealousy part, the Beatles.
Okay. Yeah.
You
yeah,
know
yeah,
that,
yeah.
yeah. But you're getting things from creators that are, collections that are coming in and that. So the challenge is we have all of these different formats. We need to protect them, preserve them, digitize some of them,
Yeah.
keep up with the technology,
Yeah.
recruit staff that can work with those different types of materials. So,
You got to have
What's
someone who can
exciting?
still use a record player or an 8-track
in
player.
fact, the Library of Congress has that.
Yeah, I know I think you may have even more gadgets than we do. But I mean,
do.
But we did a big project called during my time actually called Save Our Sounds, where we realized that actually some of the ancient manuscripts are in quite good shape, but actually some of the 20th century sound recordings
That's
were
right.
absolutely not. And I think we calculated there were at least 42 different formats of sound recording that we held. And some like those very early wax cylinders, for
Yes,
sure,
we
those
have those.
very, very fragile. But equally, there were like formats in the 1980s that were early digital formats that only lasted a few years but have unique content. So right across the piece, there was a genuine risk simply of losing that material. And we did raise money, and we have managed to digitize and preserve quite a lot, but not all, and it remains fragile. And so I think that point about endlessly upgrading and refreshing the formats and then encountering the many different ways in which knowledge will come in through our door. And it's not even simple enough to say it comes in digitally, because digital is many, many formats. So I think that is a challenge, and the skills and the talent and the capacity to manage it is a challenge. And we'd be kidding ourselves if we didn't also say that therefore that's a financial challenge as well, because we're rightly required to operate at the very highest level here. But these are complicated operations, and you have to make hard choices sometimes about what to focus on.
Right, I was put in my place when my 16-year-old son did not know what a floppy disk was.
Yeah.
Had no clue.
you
That's enough of the doom and gloom stuff. So tell us about an exciting development on the horizon for both of your respective institutions. What can people look forward to in the future that you've helped set up? that you can tell us about?
Well, I've worked with the wonderful, wonderful staff, and they have really been trying to think about that outreach to public libraries and communities. And they just received a grant to have, the working title now is a digital depot, in 2 public libraries to test out having communities use the Library of Congress's materials and tailor them to their own communities and having workshops. And so that's really exciting, because then you see the outreach making such an impact. And so we're real excited about that.
How intriguing. I was nearly going to talk about a big new building and extension. That is important and
That
cool,
is
but
good.
actually, inspired by that, oddly enough, we've just received a grant from a great philanthropist, actually, in the UK, to at least initiate a project similar but different. It's called the Young Creators Program. And this is about pulling together a group of young people, actually from the immediate neighborhood around the library, who may have had no connection with the library at all, and train them and help them and encourage them and make the conditions for them to start making video content about and inspired by our collections in their own voice, to put out on TikTok or whatever the social media platform of choice might be, literally to inspire not just young people in the UK but across the world with just some of what is held in a national library.
Right.
And already they put out stories that our curators would never have thought of. They've lit upon items in the collection and conjured whole stories. There was a story about a comb and its cultural significance, and then that took them back into the ancient history of combs, and suddenly you had a 4 or 5 minute film out there on the internet, inspired by the National Library, that we could never have thought of ourselves. And I think wherever that project goes, and we need to raise more funds and make it grow, it's taught us a lesson that actually if you can let new generations in, there's literally no limit to the new stories and new discoveries that are going to come out.
And that's what's so exciting, because you are putting the collections in their hands, basically, and saying, look at these. We've been looking at them for decades, and you look at them. And that's when the different things come out of it, and you're just amazed. So you notice that both of those initiatives are the results of grants. And so the private support has become increasingly significant in terms of being able to experiment, be able to do pilot programs that we couldn't with our base.
For sure. I mean, both of us, look, we both are grateful and benefit from the public funding that we get, which kind of funds as much as we can the core operation, but always the real vitality often comes from the visionary donors or philanthropists who suddenly either we have an idea or they have an idea that opens up a new door. And actually it's lovely to be doing this with our American Trust, who are our friends in America, who have generously helped us always do more over the years, whether that's a new educational program or maybe helping us acquire another British treasure for the collection or whatever it might be. So it's both and. I mean, long may our respective nations support the core, but equally there's almost no limit to the added value that enlightened partnerships with funders can bring in.
And Roly, as you look back on your tenure, what do you consider your most significant achievement at your institution? And Carla, in your ongoing stewardship of the National Library here, what do you consider your most significant achievement?
Jesse, when I look back first of all at the 12 most fulfilling years of my professional career. What a privilege it is, even for a while, to be granted the responsibility of trying to care for and look after and lead one of these institutions. And I think I find it, because it is such a collaborative effort, I think I find it hard to think about an achievement, really. I think the best I can say is I hope, just by building on what my predecessor did and thinking about handing on to Rebecca, who you're about to meet, who's going to be my successor, I think it has been really about, as best I can, to try to lead authentically, to just be myself, and hope and trust that by honestly sharing my enthusiasms, my passion, occasionally my dilemmas or my anxieties or whatever it might be, that might help the teams who do all the real work give of their best. And anything that good that has happened has been the moments when that has come together.
Okay.
And that's very similar to what I look at in looking at being at the Library of Congress, because I was a professional librarian, so I knew about the Library of Congress, had many, many colleagues who worked here, and one colleague that has been dear to me for so many years, Winston Tabb, who I called on. He had a long 30-plus years at the Library of Congress, and then went on to the Johns Hopkins, and just icon in librarianship. I called him and said, Winston, what advice would you give? And he said, just be human. And just to bring that humanness and that perennial student that I'm just still, even though I'm a professional librarian, I didn't know all the wonders of the Library of Congress. And so to bring that out to everyone, to say, look at this, look at what's here, has been something very rewarding.
So I'm going to take a small shift here, because we had questions that were pre-submitted by some of your fans that they want you to answer.
Oh,
so
boy.
I'm going to shift to those questions. And the first question that was submitted was, if history is shaped as much by available documentation as it is by its narrators, how does each of your nonpartisan national libraries approach the ideal of a comprehensive, authoritative, historical truth in your exhibition and collection strategies?
Wow.
Well,
Who's gonna-
Roly, that
Well,
was your question.
Clearly, that's my question. I think you'll find it was for both of us, Carl. Well, I think it's a great question, and it touches a little bit on that question of trust and authority and library values that we were both talking about earlier. And in a way, I think that is the heart of it when it comes to collection building and collection shaping, and the core of the growth and building of a collection in a national library wonderfully is driven by that extraordinary, open, comprehensive, democratic ingest that is your copyright collecting, our legal deposit collecting, where there's no discrimination, there's no just what a free society chooses to freely publish or put into copyright comes here, and that becomes the truthful record of what society told itself. Doesn't mean it's the scientific truth about anything, but it is that.
And that's the thing.
And that's what people can come in and discover. And I think, and when we do indeed put on exhibitions from time to time, and of course there you have to be selective and you are telling a story, but we try and keep those values in there and just think about how do you do justice to that breadth and implicit balance of perspectives that the collection holds.
It's the record. What did happen? What really was said? And who said what? That is it. That's the point.
Yeah.
And you could find it. Here is the document.
Yeah.
Here is what this one.
All right, another question was, both the British Library and the Library of Congress mount exhibitions of documents, manuscripts, books, and artifacts. And in both cases, both institutions rely heavily on in-house collections supplemented by external loans.
Yes.
This seems very similar to museum work. In what ways do you each draw distinctions between library and museum collections and exhibitions?
We might not. I mean, an exhibition is, in itself, you're putting material in front of the public in an interesting way, using graphics and that. So the similarities between a library exhibition and a museum exhibition, based on what we're exhibiting, we don't have paintings.
No. but
Though
we have-
every now and then you
we-
might
yeah,
have a
we have a
portrait
few paintings, yeah.
that you might put
Yeah.
in. So it's interesting. There's a synergy there.
Oh, totally. I mean, and we work very closely with museums. I've always never really seen this hard cut off between. And I remember on day one, and when I took over the job, I think I stood in front of staff and said, someone's told me I'm going to have to make a decision between, are we predominantly a cultural institution, a bit like, or are we a research institution? I said, we're obviously both, and we're going to do more interesting work by being fed out of the other. The exhibitions we do put on, I think, maybe do have a particular characteristic of librariness and research maybe that goes into them, but we've learned so much from our museum friends in doing that. So no, Carla, I think we've put effort in to trying, frankly, to be as good as some of the amazing work in exhibitions that certainly in the UK and Smithsonian here have done. So I think I'd take a very generous view towards what the museum sector has done. And the one thing I suppose we are beginning to think about is how sometimes with our exhibitions can we then inspire people to want to come in and use the library and actually take things even further.
And the Library of Congress, for example, is working on an exhibit that will be opening soon, maybe this spring, the two Georges, George III and also George Washington. And it's a collaborative effort with the Royal Archives. And also, the exhibit will open in Washington, D.C. at the Library of Congress, and then it will be modified and go to the Science Museum in London. So there's a real give and take there.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have our fantasy exhibition is currently in a museum in California at the moment. There we go. Yeah, for sure.
This is Washington, D.C., so politics seeps into everything. So, of course, one of your fans had a somewhat political question. So, though both the Library of Congress and the British Library are nonpartisan, apolitical institutions, in what ways do you view a national library as having a role to play to engage with or inform the political activities of a nation?
We have a civic role for an informed citizenry.
Yeah.
So we make available as much information about the national history. People can look at the Gettysburg Address and see the crossouts or whatever. You have a responsibility to provide that civic background and material for people to use.
And obviously you have a very particular role serving Congress, so that connects you. But even for us, it's a little bit like, to build on that point, I mean, the work we used to do my colleagues at the BBC still do, which is to inform the citizens in a neutral and balanced way so that they can be the best citizens they can be, as informed as they can be. And I think libraries are part of that. It's free access to knowledge. It's why it's so fundamental a principle. It's not political, but it's about creating the conditions for the healthiest possible politics and civic society to take place. And I think, for sure, libraries are part of the infrastructure of that. So I think that's one way to put it. And then there may be, we were talking to your colleagues about copyright policy. We have expert roles sometimes on a few particular areas to maybe provide a bit of expert advice or opinion.
On that same level of question, how has your institutions approached the complex process of addressing colonial legacies within your collections?
Oh, the U.S. was a colony.
Yes,
so we
is that one on my side?
I think that's you.
What discussion? It's such a rich, and again, this could be another whole, a very, very rich conversation, and it's one that, of course, affects our friends in the museum sector right across Europe and the Western world. And I have to say it's been contested and a lively debate. I think it's been such a healthy moment because it's, if nothing else, the debate around these matters has triggered a lot of new knowledge and awareness over the last decade or so. And in our case, I think it's influenced some of our thinking and practice, even about really simple things like the labels in our treasures gallery, and not just giving like a catalogue number, but just a simple sentence, non-judgmental. How did this object item come to be sitting here in, say, London in this particular collection? And that, I think, now is just best practice. It's just an adult-to-adult communication with people coming into that space to understand that we are careful and thoughtful custodians of items that exist under our roof for reasons of British imperial, colonial history, sometimes a dark and contested history, but one that this is back to the point about trust and openness, we can now talk about and give an accurate account of. And actually, so far, I think that's been nothing but healthy for the practice of librarianship. And I'm sure you have
Well, the United States,
different
of course,
debates here.
has difficult history, and there's an ongoing debate about how much of that do you present, and how do you tell that, and from what perspective.
Well, this question must have come from a librarian. So, what are the most significant changes you have seen in the world of libraries during your times at the British Library and the Library of Congress?
Oh, libraries in general? Well, the ability to present, especially in public libraries, we've seen it, it's beyond books. They're loaning out musical instruments and all types of things. So you're seeing that happen on the local level. And then for the National Library, it is that connecting with the local libraries and state libraries, and just really being part of the larger library community and a sense of unity that hadn't been there before.
And I think, without ducking the question, I think some of the changes we've been talking about for our own libraries during this period are exactly those themes that the question is asking about. I think on public libraries, though, even though I won't disguise the fact that in the UK there's lots of anxiety over funding levels, and resourcing is always a challenge. There have been some library closures, of course, but the resourcefulness and creativity that the profession has shown has actually, I think, 10, 12 years on, even in my time, repositioned them in the eyes of local and national politicians as centres which are about far more even than just access to books or whatever it might be, and are fully understood now to be crucial in maintaining a sense of community presence and identity and enjoyment and presence, and also in debates around health and well-being and mental health. The penny has dropped that those locations, well-resourced, can actually be a vital part in the huge chain of keeping a society healthy and preventative information and care. And I think that's a journey that on our side of the Atlantic is just beginning, but it's amazingly vivid to see how it's taking root.
Here's a question from someone who wants apparently to test your knowledge
Oh, no.
of your collections.
Oh no.
So, if you had to choose the collection item perceived by the public to be the most valuable in a societal rather than monetary sense 50 years ago, and compared to the item that would be considered the most valuable today, what would each of those items be? So what item would be considered most valuable 50 years ago?
So
What
and
item
still,
would is it the same thing? Would that same thing be the most valuable item
and
today?
it's interesting, the Gutenberg Bible, the Library of Congress, Bibliothèque Nationale, and the British Library have the only 3 copies on vellum. And we all display them very prominently. And so people still look at that.
I looked at it before I came in here.
However, because of a wonderful social media confluence of connecting our collection to a popular entertainer, the James Madison, one of the president's crystal flute, is now sought after and looked at as, oh, well, this must be wonderful because a popular entertainer played it in the middle of the library. And people come in wanting to see the crystal flute that hadn't been on public display before.
Wow.
So the Gutenberg Bible and the crystal flute that was twerked with.
Okay.
Really interesting. I don't think the real value has changed, and 50 years ago, I think the Lindisfarne Gospels or the Magna Carta,
yes.
These would, and I think, to be honest, they are still there. But 50 years ago, the British Library didn't hold the lyrics to Yesterday written by Paul McCartney. And
it's wonderful.
the library does now hold that, and so maybe that has a value of a different kind.
Okay, wow.
Oh, yes, that you should see the Beatles section of what they have. Yeah. Pretty cool.
Well, we're going to take a quick break right now. We're going to be joined by a special guest in just a minute, so we'll pick up our conversation in just one moment. We're back, and we're very honored to be joined by the incoming Chief Executive of the British Library, Rebecca Lawrence. Rebecca, thank you so much for joining this conversation.
Oh, it's just an honor and a privilege to be here. It really is. Thank you for having me.
And of course, so our first question is up to you, obviously, is what are the future plans for the British Library?
Well, when I think of that, I really think in three chapters. I think first of the privilege of what I'm inheriting here, which is obviously a fantastic and historic collection that we've heard about. It's inheriting a vision and a set of purposes through the leadership that Sir Roly has brought that I really look forward to cherishing and curating as much as the collections themselves. And finally, what I inherit, but not least of all, is of course the fantastic people and partners of the British Library. It's a privilege to start the process of meeting them that I will continue. So just deep experts and really fantastic and inspiring people. So this is what I curate, and looking forward to the future. I mean, some amazing opportunities there. You've spoken about the role that libraries and national libraries play in terms of authenticity, the role that we will always continue to play in understanding difference and accessing that so that students of the future will understand the context of current times, which can seem quite divided in new ways. And what's also really exciting about the future is the opportunity of technology, which is in a period of exponential change and I think can be harnessed to wonderful effects. But finally, there's also the work of the present, and in a really sort of practical sense, that's continuing the process of restoring access, of supporting staff and people through what's been a difficult time for people in any institution working through a pandemic and the current challenges that we all face, and looking at resources and prioritization in a way that really supports our people so that we can renew and rebuild into the even greater network of national libraries that it's been the privilege to inherit. So it's a wonderful and exciting mission.
So I'm going to put you on the spot since we're here at the lovely Library of Congress. What do you see as the future relationship between the British Library and the Library of Congress?
What a great question. And I have to say, before I answer that, I'll say what actually really anchored my vision of the importance of great national libraries. And first, it was as a little girl being brought to our national library, the British Library, by my primary school teacher, who was actually my mother. And she took our inner city class of a very mixed state primary school to the British Museum, which at that stage housed the British Library's collection, and introduced us to the world of illuminated manuscripts, and just being able to feel like that big institution was not imposing, but was there for us and had a connection and a purpose was wonderful. And then I first was looked after by this great institution, the Library of Congress, some years later as an undergraduate student of politics, doing a research thesis on political institutions and how the institutional framework of the US political system influenced a particular piece of legislation. This was, showing my age a little, on the cusp of the internet, and I relied on the services of the Library of Congress and its reading rooms to read those transcripts of committees, to understand the research undertaken, to do book research, and then cold call a number of congressional staffers and generate a rich heritage, from which I decided actually not to pursue a research career, but to enter public administration myself in the British civil service. So I understand the value of libraries, have lived it myself, and the value of this partnership is, you can't put a price on it. It's the collaboration of scholarship. It's the sharing of expertise. There are a unique and small number of institutions that share around the world that share these characteristics and the same vision and challenges around access, around digitization, around community identity, and the ability to come and learn and be learners together, and to be part of that international collaboration is I think, unique. And obviously we have our shared historical traditions and roots, and I'm a firm Atlanticist, and I will continue the collaboration that you see personified here through Roly and Carla.
So this question is for all of you. We'll, of course, we'll pick on you since you're the new person. We'll continue hazing you just a little bit.
That's fine.
But what emerging challenges facing national libraries might benefit the most from international cooperation?
Yeah. So, I mean, we all share the challenges of resources. Libraries have through the history of libraries as well. I think the challenges around technology, application of AI, what that means for authenticity of collections, what that means throughout our functions and purposes are ones where it's really, really good to share together. And then there's, of course, the breadth of our collections together, where we can present historic collections in new ways and imagine them in new ways for our communities and our citizens, which I think is really exciting to do in the future.
Carla?
Well, we just the fact that we're all here together and our staffs have worked together and sharing those experiences and looking at how we could go even beyond just sharing what we're doing, but maybe do some things together, some pilot programs for international relations, as well as sharing our resources together. And with technology, that could be possible. So it was exciting to spend a day with the different staff members talking about the same issues and saying, okay, let's see how we can work together.
Totally. And I mean, I think technology moves so fast that whatever conversations we're having this year will be different from next year and the year beyond. But even just today, sitting, I thought, with Carla's team, discussing, for instance, the challenges of AI and the opportunities of AI. And you could, on which, by the way, you are very advanced and we're going to learn a lot from you, but nonetheless, there is so much mutual learning to be done then, because fundamentally that, like so much technology, doesn't discriminate between countries, cultures, languages. In the end, we all have to solve these problems together. And one thing I've really noticed stepping into this amazing library professional sector, perhaps it was to do with my old world, it is the most collaborative profession I have ever encountered. People just can't not share their thoughts and ideas.
Or take from each other. We have no shame.
No shame. But that is great to have no shame, because it just means that these institutions which singly can be quite lonely because there's only tends to be one per nation, but as a community of mutual learning and mutual understanding is very, very powerful. And at a time when the world can be tense and difficult in all sorts of situations, this network is really powerful.
Yeah, I would echo that. I mean, your team were really inspiring earlier today, and as knowledge institutions, sharing that knowledge with each other is very, very powerful and stimulating.
We've talked specifically about the relationship between the British Library and the Library of Congress, but there are other national libraries around the world. What would greater cooperation between these national libraries, what would that change? How would that make the world better?
Working together and sharing our experiences. For instance, we had the national librarians and archivists from Australia, New Zealand, and Canada that came and spent time with us, and we have staff that have been over to their countries as well, and you just get a sense of the collective strength of combining these great institutions and the resources we have. Think about that network. We had one for-profit search engine person say, boy, if you libraries got together, you could really rival what we do. And I was like, yeah, we could, couldn't we?
We could. But do we,
do we want
we want to do
No.
exactly
No.
that? I think, Jesse, I think, I'm here with members of my international team, and I think there's more to be done, but already it happens.
a lot.
And there is a lot, and I think it's particularly around national libraries, it is driven by a thought inspired by each of us, as we were saying, having this remarkably comprehensive, authoritative record of an individual nation. If you piece those together, you can't have the world's knowledge, but it's getting pretty close to it.
Very much.
And so as well as that expertise across our collections, which together form such a significant global asset, there's the ability to learn from each other's innovation and to learn in a safe and supportive way, because we are sharers of information. And I think that's really, really powerful as well, especially in a world of constrained resources. So that information and innovation sharing, I think, is key.
And people can be world travelers by our cooperation. They might not even leave their own country, but they'll have access to so much.
Rebecca, this question always comes up to librarians and national librarians, so I'm glad I get to be the first one to ask it. How do we get the younger generation to appreciate and love not only local libraries, but national libraries? It's been predicted for so many years, the death of the book.
Yeah.
How do we get the younger generation to appreciate the contents of a national library, but not just that, the local libraries as well?
Yeah. Well, I mean, access is a huge theme. You heard my story, and I think those public access programs of getting children in and inspired and engaged when they're there is really important. And you heard Roly describe the kind of collaboration through the National Library Network, which really has been, I mean, big in its uptake. So keep reinventing, keep listening, and listening to the perspective of the children. You know, co-designing and what they learn, because they can teach us a lot. And some of the hardest audiences one ever talks to with the most difficult questions comes from the very young.
The Library of Congress is opening up a youth center, and it was named by the youth. We had a youth advisory council, and boy, were they tough.
Yeah.
They worked with the designers. They would say things like, this is dull, these colors don't work, you think it's cool, we don't.
Yeah.
Right? But just to really get a sense of what 7, 8, 9-year-olds, and 11-year-olds at that crucial time when they're asking a lot of questions. That's that sweet spot.
Yeah.
To find out from them, what do you want to do?
No, I think both Rebecca and Carla have said it. I think we're both in different ways opening ourselves up to the new generation, and actually we've grown our program for schools and young people, even thinking about an under fives program now, because you are literally never too young to engage with what libraries have to offer. You know this from your
Yes.
public library background. And if you can inspire children before the age of 10 with a sense of the power of knowledge and what it can mean for yourself, then you can take them on a journey, a bit like you being taken to the British Library in the museum to see the manuscripts then. It can just change lives.
Rebecca, how do you plan to honor the existing initiatives inside the British Library while introducing innovations that reflect your own unique vision for the institution and its future?
Well, I won't be doing this on my own, and this is what, when I start in January, I'll be engaging staff and leaders around the organisation with. As I say, there's a really firm foundation that we've been given there, and I know that speaking to staff and leaders will be able to galvanise and crystallise around what those top priorities are. So I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint you, because you're not going to hear that first. That's for the staff of the British Library.
Darn it. Trying to sneak one in
Breaking
there.
news.
So can you tell us a little bit about future plans, what we can look forward to at the British Library, what we can expect to see next year?
Yeah, well,
He's trying to get
there's
at it another way,
a
isn't he?
great, there's
Another
a
door.
great programme.
Indeed, I think it would be probably just about right to say that in January you'll be talking to our staff
Yes,
about
that's
that.
right.
So,
That's right.
Jesse, that was a well-timed question. But
Well, I have to try. So this question is for all three of you. As you reflect on your time as the leaders of your institution and as you come in, what are the most strident challenges do you see for the institutions as we go into the future? What is it that you see as possibly the biggest danger for national libraries and their collections? What do you see as things that we need to concentrate on now to ensure that these collections and these repository of knowledge stay for future generations?
I think we'll all be challenged with the resources to keep up with the technology, to safeguard our collections, because we will have to make sure that they are available for future generations. So that's something that we're all dealing with, and we talk about it. Private support has been helpful, and we know that we need to really make sure that we're on sound financial ground as we move forward.
I think, getting the balance of public and private resource to keep these institutions as well resourced as they can be, but Rebecca, as you've said, ensuring that within that mix we're able to take the smartest possible judgment about prioritizing how we do that.
And I think there's the continued maintaining of the relevance of the libraries and their collections, but that's where the real value and the opportunity is, because through our collections, people can see their own identity there, interpreted, reinterpreted through current lenses, and it's a route into people understanding themselves and understanding difference.
So as the public, most visible face of your institutions and the incoming public face of the institution, what do you see as your role in relation to your library's holdings and collections?
Sharing them.
Yes, and leading the staff and empowering the staff to give of their best, I think.
Absolutely.
You see yourself as the cheerleader for the collection?
Sometimes a coach.
Yeah.
Sometimes a cheerleader, especially with external. You're really, but internal too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're a facilitator
Yeah.
to the staff to help them do what they need to do. You help get the resources. You're the one that.
Yeah.
And you're an interim custodian. You're
That's
cherishing and you're caring, and then
And you pass the
are
baton.
literally handing it on.
Galvanizing a team around a common mission, external advocacy, and careful custodianship,
Okay.
as well as inspiring and energizing. And I think your point about enjoyment, I think, so
Having
that
fun.
everybody can enjoy the collection, and that's what will fuel those of us that work in the sector as well, the enjoyment of others and
Okay, so as we get here to the end, I want to give each of you a chance to give one final statement, one final thought on your term, the final thoughts on international cooperation, where the British Library and the Library of Congress can work together. Where do you see that relationship going in the future? Final thoughts.
Well, I could start
You
because
start,
you
that's
two
good.
were going to be here. Really, the handing of the baton is right here. And the future of the relationship with the Library of Congress and the British Library is so bright and so strong. And not only are we passing the baton between you two, but we're passing that relationship
Yeah.
on and strengthening it. And so we're really looking forward to continuing that.
Well, I think, Jesse, the very fact that we're both here today is probably the simplest answer to your question, because certainly as I come towards literally my final weeks in post as Chief Exec of the British Library, it has felt the most natural thing in the world to get on a plane and come here and see and spend time with this institution, and to bring Rebecca with me, because I think that is a signal that this relationship is truly special, to coin a phrase, and it's special within the world of libraries, because the sheer sympathy and alignment and commonality of values that we feel is actually, if we get that right, I think it will have an influence in both our countries and maybe beyond.
Yeah. And for me, I think of two words. I think of gratitude for what's been built across the leadership of these two institutions, and I think of commitment. So my commitment to the users of the library, British Library and globally, to staff, and to continuing the great international collaboration that I've had the honor to inherit.
Well, this has been a fabulous conversation with three absolutely fabulous people. I would like to thank Dr. Carla Hayden, Librarian of Congress, Sir Roly Keating, Chief Executive of British Library, and the incoming Chief Executive of the British Library, Rebecca Lawrence, for being here for this conversation. I want to thank you all so much, because I've learned so much about libraries. This has been fabulous. Thank all of you for watching this conversation, and hopefully we'll see you in a library soon.